Arkagis Revolution, Arkagis? Well, this video is out to a fine start. I can't even say the name of the game. Arkagis Revolution is a new game for the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, which was originally set to launch in May 2020. But due to the recent COVID-19 virus, its physical release has been delayed. I've been following the game on Twitter for a while now, so I got in touch with the developers and asked them for a review copy of the game. But sadly, due to the whole COVID-19 business, they couldn't really send me a physical copy of the game. So instead, I was sent a ROM file, which is how I'm playing this game. The game is an impressive looking Mode 7-like overhead shooter for the Mega Drive, which is an awesome technical marvel for the system. But it doesn't stop there. It's got impressive looking cutscenes and even full voice acting. Now, this was supposed to be the part where I talk about the game's physical packaging, but yeah, that's not gonna happen. I will say, I'm not a big fan of the cover art though. I don't know if this is just a placeholder or the real thing. But I'm not really feeling what they went with here. The website also lists the full packaging will include the cartridge, clamshell box, and full color manual. I should point out that because I don't have a physical cartridge, I'm playing my copy of the game on the Fusion emulator, and I'm using the Mega Drive Mini's 3-button controller. While playing it, I didn't run into any weird bugs or emulation issues. But I have no way to tell if any do exist when playing the game on the actual console. But sadly, that's about as far as I can take this segment. So let's get to the game. Arkagis Revolution begins with a really impressive looking intro. You've got smooth animations and everything is drawn in perspective to give it a polygonal look. It kind of reminds me of Flashback or Another World in this regard, and it's really well done. It looks really great, but there's one thing that kinda ruins it. The faces. I'm sorry, but just look at their faces. Why are they so goofy? Even the villain looks like that goofy science teacher you had back in high school. I'm sorry, but I just can't get over how goofy their faces look. I think they were going for an anime style, something which I'm all for. But clearly, something did not translate as well as they'd hoped. Anyway, the intro tells the story of how your planet was living under a dictatorship, and then a second force invaded aiming to overthrow them, only to then install their own rule. So now, it's your job to overthrow them and actually free your planet for once. As you start the game, you're prompted to what is probably a Mega Drive first. Full voice acting for every dialogue line.
Commander here, this is an enemy warehouse. According to our reports, they're storing a new weapon here.
This is honestly really impressive. You have different characters, different actors, and it doesn't seem like they reuse any lines either. The only other game I can think of that does something like this is Strider Returns for the Mega Drive. But the less said about that game, the better. Not to mention, Arkagis Revolution has way more lines of dialogue than that game. Sure, they may not sound as clear as Strider Returns.
This is Mika. I'm the engineer of this ship. It's the first time it'll be in use. Let's test it. Roger.
I have you now. Never, my friend. Tomorrow is the day you die.
But from a technical standpoint, it's still impressive. And at least the characters' faces look a lot better on this small window screen. Equally impressive from a technical standpoint is the game itself. I mean, look at this! How many games on the Mega Drive can you think of that have complete sprite and background rotation? I can think of Red Zone, and that's pretty much it. The game also runs very smoothly. I tried testing its limits to see if there were any frame rate drops, and save for 1 or 2 spots in the final level, this was a completely smooth experience. And even when the frame rate drops, it was barely noticeable during gameplay, and probably won't be noticeable at all on YouTube. Now, this does come with a few caveats. As you've no doubt noticed, 2/3 of the screen are covered by your heads-up display. And boy, does this make the game feel claustrophobic. Yes, you do get used to it, but that lingering feeling of claustrophobia never fully goes away. This means I often found myself running into enemies or dangers or not knowing how close they were to me because of my limited view area. It also doesn't help that many levels are pretty claustrophobic in of themselves, with small rooms, narrow passages, long corridors, that sort of thing. Despite this, Arkagis Revolution is super easy. I was able to finish the game in 1 hour on my first playthrough, and this was helped by some really tight controls and responsive maneuvering. You move your ship with the D-pad, shoot with the B button, and use the A and C buttons to turn. And this works surprisingly well. You turn fast and on a dime, and your enemies are so large that it makes it easy to hit them so long as you shoot in their general vicinity. This was an issue I had with Xenocrisis, as I was never sure which button turned me into what direction. But here, it works flawlessly. You also have a few weapon pickups that help you along the way. You start with your normal pea shooter, which is also the only weapon that can be upgraded to fire stronger shots. It's just your regular, standard weapon though, no real frills here. Then you get the homing weapon, and by God, this weapon is so good. It lets you shoot from corners and it targets enemies before they even appear on screen. So I just kept using it as a makeshift radar to know which direction my enemies were coming from. And often I was taking them out before I ever even saw them. So yeah, this is definitely my favorite weapon in the game. And then you get a charge shot, which can shoot open doors or destroy multiple enemies at once. At first, I didn't really care for this one, due to its slow refire rate. But I did find some use for it, more on that later. And that's it, 3 weapons. Yeah, I was a little disappointed, but at least switching between them is quick and easy. You either press the XYZ buttons on the 6-button controller to instantly select that weapon, or you can pause Arkagis Revolution and select your weapon in an instant. So it never brings down the pacing of the game, and man, what a pacing it is! I just kept charging in and shooting down everything in my path. It was incredibly satisfying mowing down every enemy I came across. And the smooth controls also helped when I ran into some environmental challenges. The levels are all fairly large too, and you can even access the map to help you guide your way. Though to be fair, I never really needed the map, as it doesn't let you scroll where you wanted to, nor does it highlight any points of interest like enemies, doors, or weapon and health pickups. Not that you really need a map in the first place though, as the levels are all pretty straightforward. Sure, they have side rooms for the aforementioned weapon and health pickups, and some levels are larger than others, either with wide open areas to explore or several interconnected rooms. But they're all fairly easy to navigate. As long as you maintain some basic sense of direction, you'll always know where you've been and where you're going. One thing that did bother me though is how every time you leave an area, the game resets your weapons and health. This means that if you go out of your way to find all the weapon pickups in a stage, you'll lose them once you complete that area and move on to either the next one or to the end level boss. It kind of made me question what's the point in collecting weapons if I can't use them against bosses. With that said, the game is pretty short with only 5 levels. Not only that, but you also have 3 tutorial segments which are sadly unskippable. But at least, at the start of every level, boss fight, and upon completing each level, you get some voice dialogue. I'm sorry, but that is just so impressive to me. One thing I did notice is that the enemy AI doesn't really know what to do when you start strafing and shooting, so it's really easy to dodge their shots and mow them down. This includes bosses too. So long as you keep strafing and shooting, you'll have no issue dealing with any of them, including the final boss. One way the game seems to get around this is by littering the levels and boss fights with barrels and other destructible environments. But if you take the time to clear the area first, then you can take out the bosses without any major hassles. In fact, the game was so easy that I was able to beat it on my first try without losing any lives. At least, you do get a difficulty slider, so I decided to crank it all the way up. Not that I had any issues, I mean, I'm already a pro at this game. There's nothing you can throw at me that would make me... fun! So yeah, it's harder now. I don't know if it adds more enemies or if they're just more aggressive, but I suddenly found myself having trouble dodging all their bullets and was at the edge of my seat the entire time. Not only that, but suddenly I started using my weapons much more strategically. I was still using the homing weapon to attack enemies from corners and using it as an early warning system, but suddenly I found myself baiting enemies towards those long corridors I mentioned and taking out multiple foes at once with the charge shot. In fact, I found myself using the charge shot a lot more often now. I'd even start using the backwards boost you get from firing it to my advantage, so that I could take down multiple enemies at once while putting some distance between me and their bullets. Even the bosses were much more difficult this time, as they change up their patterns or go into erratic behaviors so that you couldn't hit them just by strafing in the same direction over and over again while shooting. So yeah, I was now playing Arkagis Revolution much more strategically and the game was better for it. The game also has a speedrun mode, which basically gives you a counter on the upper right corner to let you know how long you're taking to beat the game. It still doesn't let you skip the tutorial segments though. Graphically, I generally enjoyed the game for its sprite and background rotation, but I thought the colors were kind of dull, and the levels also seemed pretty featureless. Like here, this stage where you're supposed to be inside a research facility. Does any of this scream research facility or laboratory to you? Give me giant test tubes with humans in it. Give me prototype machines still in construction. Just anything. The music is also fairly good, but nothing I'd say spectacular. Still, it does a good job and sounds way better than many officially released games. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Arkagis Revolution. This game is a technical marvel on the console, but more than that, it's also a really fun game. Sure, I had some problems with the low difficulty at first, but once I raised the settings to my liking, suddenly I got the challenge I was looking for while using each weapon and my tank's mobility to its fullest. I have little doubt in my mind that if Arkagis Revolution had launched back in the day, it would have been a showstopper. And out of all the modern Mega Drive games released, as of now, this one is definitely on my top 5, and I highly recommend it. If you want to buy a copy of the game, you can go to Arkagis.com, which has links to European and Japanese stores. As of yet, there doesn't seem to be any US online stores for the game. And although I can't give an opinion on the physical packaging, I can at least say the game itself is definitely worth it. Just be sure to remember to temper expectations and keep in mind you can easily finish this game in about an hour. Hey everyone, thank you for watching Stikka's Retro Corner. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. All that fun social media stuff. And if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon, where you can find all kinds of awesome rewards. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Bye!